What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are not too pissed off. It has been an experience since the last time we held one of these. It is Tuesday afternoon, which means it's time for a Blogging the Boys Roundtable, a live show on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. You can watch along live with us. Please do subscribe to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. You can always catch the rewatch at your own convenience or listen to the podcasted version of this show on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Search for Blogging the Boys wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. Our podcast network, pretty vast, pretty expansive. We have a lot of shows that we offer. And joining me today are two of our fabulous voices. You hear him every Thursday on Riled Up. You see him at the pages at bloggingtheboys.com. It is Tom Ryle on Twitter at TomRyleBTB. And joining us for the first time, new show on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. You can hear him every Sunday with Meg Murray on the World's Team, all the way from Scotland. Rick Pot 247 chiming in our comment section from Germany. So there is a strong European sense here tonight. It is Paul Stewart on Twitter at IMPStew, I believe. Paul, we'll throw it to you first. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I believe it's 11 o'clock where you're at.
Yes, it is. It's 11 p.m. And just for our German viewer, I think he's 2 hours ahead of me or 1 hour ahead. So he is in much more further time than all of us right now. So respect.
Well, Paul is very familiar with all of the time zones throughout Europe because, well, Europeans are a little bit more amicable with one another than us Americans, Tom. But besides that, Paul is a strong member of the UK Cowboys contingent, our great friends over from UK Cowboys. Check out all the great work they do. They have their shows a couple times a week, their podcast as well. Lots of fantastic draft coverage. And so, we're all obsessed with this team, Tom. But as I believe Blue 365 kind of sets the tone for our conversation tonight. Why do the Cowboys do this to us? Tom, my question to you to get the party started, what is this? Because we're all feeling this. You know what I mean? But you have a way with words that most of us don't. How would you qualify this?
It's sort of a dystopian confusion, it's just like we see the world being laid waste about the Dallas Cowboys, but we have no idea what happened. It's like we're sitting here, we're watching other teams do apparently whatever they can despite the salary cap or trading away masses of draft picks to get their guy. And the Cowboys here are saying, wow, we had a strong season last year, even though it ended badly, and let's just throw away some of our better pieces and make some really strange contract decisions. And we're all just sitting there going, why? We don't get it.
It's tough, Paul. This happens every year. Like the Cowboys are never going to be the team that's making the most cosmetic change, that's trading the biggest thing, that's making the biggest splash. But continually being a wallflower while, it's not just like some songs are hard to dance to, Cowboys. Like we don't expect you to get out there, every single tune, but you're watching the YMCA, the Cupid Shuffle, the Electric Slide. Like these are songs that everybody can dance to and they somehow refuse, Paul, for whatever reason.
Yeah. We always seem to let go of that dance partner for sure. Like we've had it over the years. We've actually we've just refused point blank to keep a hold of players when we really do need them when at their most. And this year alone, I'm just like, we seem to be having, I don't know about you guys, but I just feel as our priorities have completely shifted 360. It's like, shouldn't we be kind of focusing on keeping this guy rather than over this guy? Like, I'm just like, my mind is just completely blown away what's been going on this past week. So it's not a fun time to be a Cowboys fan right now, that's for sure.
Tom, before we fully dive in, before we put on the spelunking gear, I suppose, all of the necessary and safety equipment, because, we always want to be safe. Jose Christian says, here we go with the Cowboys hate never satisfied. Tom, I don't think we're being hateful. I don't think we're being picky. I don't think we're being shrill. Objectively speaking, Tom, what would there be to be satisfied with right now?
About the team? My goodness.
Yeah, you're right. They're, I'm sure they're, their financial earnings this past year are something to smile about. But yeah, about the state of the football team, about the prospects of winning a world championship, about the idea of ending a Super Bowl drought that is older than the Baltimore Ravens franchise.
Yeah, I don't know why the financial considerations mean anything, because none of that is lining our pockets for certain. That's all going to the Jones family. Great for them, but we are here as fans of the team. And one of the things we do after the season ends and up until free agency really gets in swing is we like to kind of gameplay, role play what we do if we were the general manager. And none of what they're doing, I think, is anything that people tried to foresee, because none of it seems to be that smart.
So to that point, Tom, I think along the lines of that, everybody does like a draft simulator, whether you're using Pro Football Focus or PFN or whatever the case may be. Everybody does that, and you screenshot, you tweet, you say, what do you think of my haul? I took so and so at 24, whatever, blah blah. And the common response is, if it's an outlandish one, is that's never going to happen. That person's never going to be available. There's always some semblance of reality to your point, and so this is the simulation where we're saying there's no way, like nobody would do this. This would never happen in real life. We don't have to beleaguer this point, Paul, because we've discussed this exact idea a lot throughout the network. But just to kind of set the stage for where we're at, first things first, the Cowboys are on the precipice of moving on from not just Amari Cooper, but DeMarcus Lawrence. Do you fully expect that to happen at this point in time, given everything that's been reported so far?
I'm at the stage where I think it's likely to happen, to be honest. With D-Law, I think he kind of came out and said he's not refusing to take any pay cut or anything like that as well. I'm pretty sure there was a couple of tweets and reports regarding that. So it kind of sounds as though he might be out on his way. And we already know about the whole Amari Cooper situation that was publicly revealed, which I was not too chuffed about. But yeah, sadly, but yeah.
Tom, Jose chimes in here and says, you have to make cuts when you pay a quarterback franchise money. Herein lies, and we don't have to, this narrative has already been properly extinguished by many different people. But herein lies the problem, and I know you are certainly one who has highlighted this for several years now. This exact comment from Jose Christian is Stephen Jones's idea, and Stephen Jones's intention is to divide the fan base from the players, to point fingers, to cast the attention. The blame is on Dak Prescott. Dak took all that money. Dak is greedy. If Dak were willing to take less money, they would have the money to keep all these players. The problem, as we've detailed many different times in all of our Blog on the Boys properties, is a lack of foresight from the Cowboys front office. If they were forward-thinking enough 3 years ago to get the deal done with Dak Prescott done the way at the time the Philadelphia Eagles were with Carson Wentz, or the LA Rams or with Jared Goff, just as two examples. We've seen many other franchises be forward-thinking in this sense with a franchise quarterback. The playbook is certainly out there. If that had been done, there would be more proverbial pie to hand out slices from, Tom.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that they act like they have some control over how big a piece of the pie they can spend on things. There is a market for franchise quarterbacks. There is a market for wide receiver ones out there. There's a market for edge rushers. And the Cowboys simply seem to be unwilling to stay up with the times on where that market is and do what's necessary to get a combination of people. They seem to think, well, oh no, now we've got to put all our money over in this bucket, so we can't move it around yet. The cap has been proven time and again to be remarkably flexible as long as you're willing to keep working forward and using the future growth in earnings as a way to make the costs that are pushed downstream more manageable. We just saw the Green Bay Packers, who were in worse salary cap situation than the Dallas Cowboys, go and pay Aaron Rodgers $200 million with the biggest guarantee ever, I think.
He did dispute those figures, just to be fully clear, Tom, but you're right. Those were the reported numbers, a 4-year, $200 million deal with $153 million guaranteed. To add to your point, Tom, go ahead. They also placed a franchise tag of value north of $18 million for Davante Adams. So at the very least, if you want to look at it in a pure vacuum sense, a $68 million commitment between that particular connection for 2022 alone between Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams.
Yeah, and they're going to have to do some remarkable gymnastics with the cap, but they're not afraid to. And oddly, the Cowboys used to be seen as a team that was constantly kicking the can down the road to an extreme, and now they're afraid to. I don't know what happened. I don't know why they're so concerned about the future years, because even if the cap did finally force you to have to part ways with players just to be able to get under it, you don't have to do that now. And the league is a right now league. All that matters is what can you do this year. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking around at the NFC, and a whole lot of teams don't look that challenging. I mean, the Seahawks just traded away Russell Wilson. They're no longer really a contender. There's really only a couple of teams that you could say are in better shape at quarterback than the Cowboys. That's Green Bay and the LA Rams. And yet the Cowboys, at a time when it looks like, oh my gosh, now's the time to push the chips all to the center of the table and go for this thing. And they're like, oh, no. We're going to just back off here and fold and save our little pile for the next hand.
We have some Cowboys storylines to get to, but on the heels of this, Paul, Tom mentioned Aaron Rodgers returning to the Green Bay Packers. He did specify he is returning. So, regardless of what the financials are, we know he'll be back. We know that the Seattle Seahawks are, taking a considerable step back, although they were pretty bad last year, even with Russell Wilson. It's my own personal contention that, this morning Dak Prescott was higher in the NFC quarterback hierarchy than Russell Wilson anyway. But he is gone. And so, when you have a franchise quarterback, you're always a threat to compete, even if the Seahawks did not last year. But, Paul, we're now in a world where you've got the Los Angeles Rams, give them their due, they're the reigning Super Bowl champions, reigning conference champions. They're a threat. I think we would all agree that the Packers are still a more sizable threat. That there was a little bit of fortuitous events that happened for the Rams to win the Super Bowl, but hey, they won it, no big deal. You've got the 49ers. They did beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. So, there is some substance to that, Paul. But generally speaking, there are not a lot of contending teams in the NFC. They all happen to reside in the AFC. So I'll put it to you, Paul. Are the Cowboys squandering, I made this up, at a competition-less NFC? The roads don't get this easy, and not only is it a weakened or a weaker conference, but they also have a very weak division. They have a very very, very malleable path to getting there, and then who knows, you get there, maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't, but it does kind of feel like they're just fine with the road being easy and not having to do much to get through it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like with the whole, especially with the trade with Seattle and Denver, like I'm just me and Mike and Jamie were just talking about this a couple of hours ago. It's like when you look at the AFC division where the Broncos are in, and when you look at all those lists of those quarterbacks, it's like, God, any one of those teams could go on to the playoffs and win and stuff like that. It's a very competitive division, but when you look at all sides within the NFC, it's like only a certain amount, a handful of teams that have that potential to actually make a dent and stand out as contenders. And that's like Rams and Green Bay. And like you said, it could be 49ers, but there can be like a 50-50 depending what they do in the offseason. So, but for like regards to us, it's all the moving parts around our team. It's like really needs to show what we need to like go forward with. Like we need to know what we're going to do with the draft, etc., and what we're going to do with Cooper and stuff like. And this is the part though. It's like we've got a big question mark when it comes to the Cowboys. Are we in that bracket where we're not competitive, or we're going to be competitive? That's the question I think we're at right now.
Tom, it does seem like the status quo for this team is to squander the would-be advantage, or rather to rest on their laurels, however you want to put that. We've seen that happen with their quarterbacks, right? When they've had franchise quarterbacks in Tony Romo and Dak Prescott, it's been a matter of, well, they'll be superstars. They'll carry us. We really don't have to do much to that side of the ball. We'll let them, be Superman every single week. And we're starting to see the beginnings of that with Micah Parsons. Micah doesn't need DeMarcus Lawrence on the defensive line. He's Micah Parsons. He'll do whatever, Micah Parsons is going to do. And then we're going to end up in a situation where in an 11-man sort of sport, Micah Parsons, albeit a heroic one, is one man and cannot be charged with the responsibility of an entire unit.
Yeah, and even worse, we've got a head coach that's got a bit of a shadow over him. It's kind of a make or break year.
Dude, it's not a shadow. This is like
Yeah.
an eclipse. I
Yeah.
mean,
and yet they're blowing up the team around him. It's like, shouldn't those be kind of something that is at once you change the head coach and you blow the team up then to start rebuilding it? Yet the Cowboys are now blowing it up first and then letting Mike McCarthy twist in the wind.
Along those lines, Tom, because this is something I discussed with Brandon Gouton from Bleeding Green Nation, SB Nation's home for Philadelphia Eagles content. He and I do a show every week that drops on Wednesdays on our podcast network called the NFC's Mixtape, where we look at the state of the division as a whole. And so this episode we recorded earlier. It'll come out on Wednesday just to kind of explain the intricacies there. But something that we were talking about, Tom, is there is no kind of theme for the Cowboys. They're not. People use the terms all in and window and things like they're not even all in on one idea, whether that idea is to slowly rebuild for the future, compete right now. They're kind of in half land with a lot of different things. They're, taking care of the future by prioritizing, the all precious, ring that is salary cap space to Stephen Jones's Gollum. And they're also like, well, we got to win now. I mean, Mike McCarthy's here to win now, and Dak Prescott's here to win now. So, but you can't have your foot in both camps. You can't win if you're only 70% win now. I mean, you can barely win sometimes. Maybe if you're the exception, if you're 100% win now. And so thinking that they can do it this way, Tom, seems a little bit foolish and really kind of arrogant.
Yeah, it's like they're managed by the dog from the movie Up. Squirrel. They constantly just kind of shift from one thing to another. And there is no overarching idea here, as you said. It's just like, well, today we're going to do this, and then the next day, oh, well, we've got this other thing we're going to do, and they don't even look at how those two might relate to one another. They get in. It's like the discontent is great. It is the winter of the Dallas Cowboys discontent here for a few more days before we finally get to spring. And I don't know. I've been a Cowboys fan for a long time, and I've been accused of being way too optimistic. I'm not optimistic about what's going to happen. And it's as I said, it's literally going to take the coaching staff and the players overcoming the management to do anything this year. I want them to win. It's just the obstacles keep growing.
Paul, generally speaking, you and the other UK Cowboys contingent, in my experience, are really positive. Anytime I do a show with you guys or I hang out with you guys, I walk away feeling like, man, I am super negative. But even you guys are kind of like not waving the white flag, but it's like this team has really beat down a lot of fans. I mean, and it's like I don't know anyone that isn't trolling that is sincerely excited. Paul, is that fair?
It's very fair, and fine well, like myself, I'm probably one of the most optimistic people out of the bunch. Obviously, Brian can be very critical at times, but I would always try and think of the positives about everything. But I'm struggling to accept what has happened in the past 24 hours right now, regards to like the Schultz and stuff like that. I'm just like, and obviously with regards to like Stephen Jones coming out in public, blah 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 blah, etc. And I'm just like, I think for the first time in a while, I'm just like, I'm kind of just like, I'm speechless.
No, we're just going through the motions. It's like, okay, free agency's here,
exactly,
cool, whatever. They're like, what could happen feasibly, Paul, that would merit, like a here we go quote tweet? Like nothing. There's nothing that is within arm's length of them that they could do that would rope you back into excitement.
Probably London, but that's a whole different conversation. But I'm just, in regards to the actual team, though, we're talking about letting go our number one wide receiver. I mean, I can understand the decision behind it because he's not, but this is more down to Kellen Moore's mistake because Cooper's only getting targeted with 3-4 targets overall. This whole, like, on average, this season, and unless a D-Law, like, well, he's on the higher payroll, but you should say some people are saying, oh, he's earning too much, but he is still one of the best run stoppers on our line. But you're just like, surely if you can restructure Dak and Zach Martin, why can't we not do the exact same with Coop and?
So to that point, Paul, the Cowboys today did create $22 million in salary cap space by restructuring the contracts of Dak Prescott and Zach Martin. Over the cap, fantastic resource for salary cap information in the NFL. Has them ultimately they're gonna be about breaking even as far as cap space after these moves. They're still a little bit over, about a hair over, but so. That's still a bad place to be, Tom, considering they have players they want to sign like Michael Gallup, who they're reportedly willing to give north of $10 million per year to. They obviously want to bring back Randy Gregory. Now, this evaluation does include Dalton Schultz, Tom, who on Tuesday the Cowboys officially placed the franchise tag on, the value of which is just under $11 million per year. Now, all of the homers, Tom, are out saying, well, the Cowboys are just going to, they're going to get a long-term deal done. They're going to get this number down. That's what they're going to do. They're going to get it down to save some cap space. They're going to push it into the future. Here's the thing, Tom. Cowboys don't exactly have a great recent history when it comes to doing that with players that are on the franchise tag. And that's what there is. I think the cloud of negativity carries some reign of history, right? Like, past behavior, precedent that the Cowboys have set. There's no reason to believe that they're going to be able to get a long-term deal done with Dalton Schultz when they didn't with Dak Prescott the first time. They didn't with DeMarcus Lawrence the first time. It took until the 11th hour to do so with Dez Bryant. I mean, they are very, very, very bad at not dragging their feet, Tom.
Yeah, and because they drag their feet, they wind up having to pay more than they should have. From Dalton Schultz's standpoint, unless they come in with something that is really good and, frankly, more than he should be paid given how he ranks among tight ends in the league, I'd play out on the tag. I bet on myself. Go out there as the number one tight end, put up some great numbers, make my market value even better.
I do that, or I wouldn't take a deal worth less than $11 million a year, because that's your rate now. Like, why would you take anything less than that, Paul? You wouldn't, because the Cowboys have now, and that's their problem. They will offer him something less than that, lower than that, and that doesn't make any logical sense because they're betting against themselves. That is the issue with placing the tag on somebody, which that you would think they would have learned based on recent memory.
Yeah, I mean, the only scenario I could think of a player would actually take less if they're being very the team have been very loyal to them in terms of helping them with rehab or something. I'm just thinking of Randy Gregory, for example, as a discount, or your Jalen Smiths. He got a discount. He took a discount. Even Amari Cooper did that because he could have had the chance to go to Washington. But regards to Schultz, I mean, he's in no obligation to take less money. I mean, like Tom just said, it's I would try and earn as much money as I could, see out the year and test the market, So, I mean, it's just, I really don't know what to just think. It's just all smoke and mirrors right now.
Well, and really, Tom, we mentioned how they wait too long. They waited. They could have extended Dalton Schultz a year ago. They would not be in this position. They could have extended Michael Gallup a year ago, and they would not be in this position. And that one I think they specifically deserve the most blame for, because all that's been said, Tom, is, well, this was the plan to cut Amari. The moment they gave Amari Cooper this deal in 2020, it was obvious. If you've been paying attention, they were going to cut Amari Cooper in 2022. Okay, if that was the case, then why not extend Michael Gallup a year ago? Because that's what a forward-thinking front office would have done. They would have said, all right, it's 2021. In 1 year, we're going to move on from Amari Cooper. We do not want to be caught with our pants down, and have Michael Gallup know that we're going to do that, be able to use that as leverage against us. I mean, obviously he had the injury and those things were unforeseen, but that would have been the smart, feasibly, it was very feasible way to handle this.
It would have been the well-connected, coherent way to do it. And it's that lack of coherence that drives you crazy. If you're going to do this, you should also do that, but they don't ever get both of them done. And it goes through the whole roster. Their decisions are puzzling. Even if you go down towards lower cost deals, we're seeing now in social media that they think that Brian Anger is too expensive and they're going to have to move on from him, but they're planning on keeping Greg Zuerlein.
So, okay, let's unpack that. All right, because when you say it that way, that sounds preposterous. I believe me, I like, let's line up, let's grab some pitchforks, let's party. Like, I'm with you. Let's storm, the Cowboys brain trust. I don't have a huge problem with not bringing back Brian Anger because I don't, it's a punter. It's a position you should take seriously, but it's a punter. I mean, spend those resources elsewhere. I'm fine with that. And I mean, the Greg Zuerlein thing, I mean, they can cut him whenever they want. Like, I don't think they're seriously necessarily bringing him back right now and saying he's going to be our kicker. I do believe because of the nepotism that surrounds, that particular position based on the particular coach. I think that they'll take him to training camp, but they'll say it's a competition. But Paul, I mean, I'm not going to lose sleep tonight because of Brian Anger. That's one thing I'm not like super upset about.
No. I'm not going to lose sleep on it as well. And we already kind of seen from the combine that Fassel was already kind of like scouting, like, so is it Matt Azir, the kicker? I can't remember the university's from, but the one that hit the 75 yards. So he's been scouting him for a while, and all the other partners were participating at the combine. So I think we're going to probably get some. We're obviously going to get someone from the undrafted at least, anyway. But I don't think we'll end up drafting a punter because we probably have more better, like you just said there, RJ. There's probably more better need for resources in different positions.
Yeah. So Tom, I mean, again, there's a long list of reasons to to be upset here. But the Brian Anger thing, I mean, it sounds bad because but I've said this before. He the two players that were surprises this season, if you want to call Dalton Schultz one, they completely lucked into. Like, anything great they've done, they have lucked into. They lucked into Micah Parsons. If the Carolina Panthers don't take J.C. Horn and the Denver Broncos don't take Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons is somewhere else, and one of those corners is in Dallas. If Jason Witten doesn't retire in 2018 the first time, who knows if they draft Dalton Schultz? When Jason unretired, they buried Dalton Schultz, and then if not for his second retiring and Blake Jarwin getting hurt, Dalton Schultz would have never had the opportunity that he did in 2020 to really emerge. I mean, so when it comes to Brian Anger, remember all the reports up through training camp where the Rams are thinking about cutting Johnny Hecker. They want to save that salary cap space. John Fassel, the moment Johnny Hecker's cut, he's bringing him back because he's got Jake McQuaid, his long snapper. He's got Greg Zuerlein, his kicker. He wants the boys back together, like Vinny and the entourage. That's how John Fassel's looking at this. But the Rams did not cut Johnny Hecker. The Cowboys were forced to go with Brian Anger, and lo and behold, Paul, he was a good player.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't really have much else to add to that, really. Just summarized it well.
Tom, Money, I'm not going to read this username. I'm not going to put the comment on the screen, actually, just because of the username. It's a family show, guys. But Money in the comment section says they needed to keep Schultz because they are getting rid of Amari. This is a commonly said thing, or has been a commonly said thing over the course of the last, 5 days. Do you accept this premise?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So, I feel badly for Dalton Schultz, to be very clear here, because there's a lot of picking at him that is happening residually. This should. Oh, Tom, you go ahead. This is the floor.
I'm not unhappy at all with Dalton Schultz because he stepped up and did what the team needed him to do, and the Schultz and the Cooper situations are two separate problems. Schultz is really their only option to have a proven tight end one.
Who cares? I mean, it's not a position I'm enamored with, but go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, but they want to, I can understand why they feel like they need to have some continuity there, to have something they can rely on, especially since Schultz has kind of assumed that safety blanket role that Jason Witten used to be for the quarterbacks. Cooper we don't really know if CeeDee Lamb is going to be the wide receiver one. Now the team has to depend on him being that. But a larger thing that runs through this is, I think it's kind of building on what you were saying, the Cowboys are mistaking having good luck with having a good plan. Because, they looked into Dak Prescott, and that just happened, and yet they seem to think somehow they're brilliant because they got him as a franchise quarterback for a song. before the at least for his rookie deal, because it was infamously fourth round
The
draft
one
pick
that
and
they
all
failed to properly capitalize on from a financial perspective as
yeah,
well. for what it's worth.
that's it, because they keep going in and thinking they are going to outsmart everybody somehow. Despite all that happens, I think the Joneses still believe they're the smartest guys in the room, and they are not able to see the evidence of what's happening. It's an amazing blind spot of theirs, and they keep plowing ahead with their, the draft is everything. The draft and cap space. You got to have draft and cap space, and so we don't go after free agents. They focus on re-signing their own, but you have to kind of question about who they're choosing to keep, because they want a guy to bring a guy in at so much, 10 million because they don't want to pay 20 million for another guy. But are they really getting the level of production? Because is Michael Gallup really going to give them enough to make up for losing Amari Cooper? I don't think that's an equitable trade-off.
Tom, you wrote about, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's going out tomorrow. I just double checked. And Paul, I'm curious for your thoughts here, because this is a sensitive subject for some people. So Tom wrote about
not here.
Ooh, okay.
Tom wrote about how so this, where the Joneses lack some, I don't know, skill, is they do under offer everybody. The initial report about Michael Gallup was his demands were higher than they expected. What a surprise, They asked DeMarcus Lawrence to take a pay cut. What a surprise. There's one player who they at least haven't reportedly asked to take a pay cut, and that would be somebody who's taking up an inordinate amount of salary cap space that doesn't necessarily make sense relative to the position that he plays, and that's Ezekiel Elliott. That's something that Tom wrote about. Again, that goes out on Wednesday morning at blogontheboys.com. And again, this is really unfair for Zeke that he is now associated with all this, Paul, but he's the only player that Stephen Jones openly defended last week at the combine. The only player said, oh, he's here. He's a warrior. He plays through injury. He's awesome. We love him, but his money's guaranteed. We can't touch it. They made this bed. I mean, and so if they have the gall to walk up to DeMarcus Lawrence and ask him to take a pay cut, what's the deal here? Why is Zeke not a part of the process when it comes to all levels of consideration?
I think the biggest mistake was Stephen Jones just saying that in public. See, if he didn't say any of that at all, then this could have been a whole different conversation in general, because you're singling out Zeke. He's pretty much untouchable regardless.
You're right.
And you're expecting all the other guys in the roster to think, wait, hold on a minute. It's why, I may have kind of be take for example, D-Law, he missed a couple of games this year, whatever. That's besides the point. But the fact is you're asked, why should I take a pay cut if you're guaranteeing him all his money? You're just a lot of players and I don't blame D-Law for saying no. I want to keep my money. You can't blame him,
Tom, along those lines, and again, this is something that we've all griped about, but you've griped about a lot. Not that it's griping, it's substantiated. So, as an example, the Denver Broncos traded for Russell Wilson today. That wasn't shocking. That made sense from people who connected dots. Obviously, there were reports and have been for the last year. They did kind of quell about Russell wanting out of Seattle. Clearly, Denver was in the quarterback market. They were obviously in the mix for Aaron Rodgers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that largely did just kind of whoa, come out of nowhere. Again, with the context of it kind of being building for a year now. The Cowboys' plans have been completely and totally transparent for the last week. Ever since Stephen Jones arrived at the NFL Combine, it's here's what we think about Zeke Elliott. Here's what we think about Amari Cooper. Here's what we think about DeMarcus Lawrence. As the weekend began, all the reports about Amari. Sunday night, the report about DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, it was completely known that they were not going to franchise tag Randy Gregory. I mean, every step of what they have done has been reported by one outlet or another somewhere along the way. I mean, saying these things, to Paul's point, hurts like themselves in contract negotiations, and it hurts players in different facets. It hurts Zeke in one facet by virtue of people saying, well, why is Zeke untouchable? Why is Zeke whatever, when, you know, we all see what's happening here? So, I mean, the lesson is shut the hell up, right, Tom? I mean, it's kind of crazy that how simplistic it is.
Which seems to be something that the Jones family is genetically incapable of doing. They talk about the business of the franchise that ought to be going on in the offices behind closed doors in front of everybody. And that is a slap in the face to the players. I mean, how motivated are you to try to work with the team when they basically come out and said, well, we don't need you. We don't want you. You're too expensive. You're not earning your paycheck. Well, yeah, I'd dig in my heels and not give them a thing back after that. If you're going to ask DeMarcus Lawrence seriously, and I don't think it was a serious request to take a pay cut. It was strictly another negotiating ploy out.
Yeah, I mean, they knew he would say no. It's a necessary part of the dance, right?
But, you know, you do that behind closed doors if you're going to ask him that at all. There's no reason to parade that out in public except you're conducting a propaganda campaign. And the Jones family has done that for years, and I hate it. It's the negotiating in public through the media is a terrible way to do it, and it just has to be creating a lot of friction with the roster. And the other players are noticing this. And there's some other people on the roster that have made comments in social media that they don't like this way of doing business.
It wasn't one of the players, Cole Beasley, made a couple of tweets regarding about that.
Yeah, he claimed this happened to him.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Paul,
I'm pretty sure. Oh, sorry. On you go. Sorry. Man.
Well, in your heart of hearts, do you believe? And I think we all think one thing, but we all hope to be wrong. But in your heart of hearts, do you believe that the Joneses are celebrating this week, that in spite of their underperforming in last season's playoffs, that they are the talk of the NFL? Granted, today the headlines are Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, but it has been, I mean, whatever national show you turn on, Cowboys, should they keep Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz? Should the Cowboys return with DeMarcus Lawrence? Should the Cowboys cut DeMarcus Lawrence? Can Micah Parsons take over the role that DeMarcus Lawrence would leave behind if they cut him? Do you, Paul, in your heart of hearts, and I'm curious if anybody watching agrees, do you believe that the Joneses are happy, like that is their nirvana, that they are being talked about by every national show in the world?
Yeah, because it just raises the profile of the actual franchise, but it's not good for, like Tom just mentioned, the team morale. All the players are going to be. I mean, if that was me on that roster myself, I'd be annoyed. It's like, what the hell? So, but from their point of view, from a marketing standpoint, yeah, it's great. It's like any like good or bad publicity is good publicity. Like, as long as our name's getting talked about, that's it, you know?
Tom, do you agree? You were nodding. For the podcast audience, you were nodding.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And I for a moment, the movie, I think it's Major League, where the owners plan to run the team into the ground and sell it or something. And the staff and the players got together and said, forget this, we're going to go out and win it all. I actually see that kind of a mentality developing in the locker room, because I think
that was the movie clip that Romo shared. I don't know if you remember in 2015 when he was hurt. He shared that clip when he was coming back. Obviously, it was a bit of an L that Tony took, but it's okay. You know, it was a great moment when he tweeted it out, nonetheless.
Yeah, but it's just you hate to see this, and it's like. There is an affection for the limelight, for the spotlight, for being on the tips of everyone's tongues around the league, that is, I think, just doing great damage to the organization as a whole. You know, it would be so great if they just became more the owners who hired a real GM and just stayed out of the day-to-day operations. But that's not going to happen. That's not how these people are made up.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was trying to say, it's like, if there's one thing Jerry can turn something that's absolutely crap into gold from any situation. Like, we remember the whole situation a couple of seasons ago with Zeke. He's like, Zeke who? and they actually made T-shirts out of it. Started like selling that. Like he'll turn anything and turn it into a profit. That's the thing. Like that's Jerry and Steven in a nutshell. So and I totally agree. It's like we should actually have an actual GM that is actually proper football orientated to actually run the operations and let Jerry and Steven think about like some marketing, because that's what they're really good at. They know how to market the team, but they just don't know how to run it.
So today is Tuesday, March 8th. Again, some people watch or listen to this later, maybe a day or two later, whatever. And we will have another roundtable next Tuesday on the night before the new league year officially begins. A new league year eve, as the cool kids call it. But it's very possible that that the Cowboys make some moves, some releases, some restructures between now and then. In fact, earlier today on Tuesday on the 750, I asked Tony Casillas if he thought the Cowboys, if he thought Amari Cooper and DeMarcus Lawrence would be Cowboys by the time we recorded next Tuesday morning. He said no. I think, unfortunately, the three of us agree. I think they probably move on and are readying for free agency by then. But I'll put it to you, and let me create this question. What is the one thing that the Cowboys can do that will still upset you? Because I feel like it's difficult to answer that. Tom, I'll go to you first because this is Paul's first roundtable, so he's not used to me springing some heavy questions onto people to have to answer right away. But what is the one thing they're holding back? What's the one thing the Cowboys are saving, Tom, that could get you to just be like, are you serious? Like you're doing this? I know the answer, but I'm curious for what you guys think.
I would say restructuring Zeke.
You know what, Tom? You are a genius. That is the question that we are now going to hit. Paul, I'll put it to you. The Cowboys, as it currently stands, can get out of Zeke's deal. The deal that they made, that they, blinked first on, they can get out of that next year and move on. And everyone can move on, move on with their lives. If they restructure him, they marry themselves to Zeke for next season as well. Now, look, we don't need to turn this into a bag on Zeke thing. We all love Zeke. We're all grateful for Zeke. We've had some good times, great memories. Wherever he ends up next, we'll wish him luck. We'll enjoy the Feed Me celebration unless it's for an NFC East rival. But we all agree that it is in the best football interest of the Dallas Cowboys to move on from him as soon as possible. So that being said, Paul, if they marry themselves to Zeke through the 2023 season, how upset will you be?
Half and half. I would sentimental.
Half. What an optimist you are.
No. Reason I say that is optimistically, I still think Zeke can still obviously do a job, but at the same time, I totally respect the business decision. I'm my hands are tied. I really don't know. It's one of those ones. It's like I love Zeke. I think he's great, like you just mentioned there. But at the same time, I hate to see him go and go to a rival or something. Oh, sorry, Tom.
No, I wanted to tag on to what you're saying. That Zeke is coming off of an injury, and what if he comes out and racks up 1,600 yards next year on the ground? And then they suddenly decide, oh, wow, we're going to redo him and keep him for another 5-6 years.
I will say something about that. We need an O-line for Zeke to run. That's my only point.
Look, guys, the podcast audience definitely can't see. It's a little bit dark behind Paul, but I can tell you that's a wall of Marvel comics, Paul. We could talk about that in a future episode. To me, where we're at with Zeke, again, super grateful for Zeke, and I would never speak an ill word about his contributions to the Cowboys. He has given and given and given, played through injury, sometimes to the demerit or to the detriment rather of the offense. But right now, Zeke is kind of like the DC cinematic universe. Now, I haven't seen the new Batman movie, but it's just like they keep trying and trying to make this a thing, trying to make it a thing, trying to make it a thing, trying to make it cool. And they have all this stuff to it. Should be cool, but it's not. It's you know what I mean? And we just got to accept it. It's not going to be cool. It's just fine. We can live with it. We can just move on, but we can just, let's accept it. Let's just let it be. And that way we don't have to keep, setting our false hope up to fall again and again and again. Am I way off base here, Paul?
Agreed. I'm a man of short, with very what's the term? I'm a man with not many words.
Yeah, and even to carry it further, when they do get something right, it's kind of accidental, like they did with Peacemaker.
Everything is accidental.
Oh yeah, like I always kind of say this. See, with regards to the likes of the draft, I always think the draft is like a lottery. You just like you can do all the scouting in the world, whatever and that, but you just don't know until the player lands in the building what you're getting, and that is one of those ones that was a fourth round. We didn't know what to expect, and then he's now our star quarterback. It was the same with Tony Romo years ago, undrafted, ended up being our star quarterback for so many years and holds so many records.
It really is amazing how they've managed to be this successful, relatively speaking, without devoting a serious resource to the most important position on the team. Like that really, truly, people be like, oh, the Cowboys have such bad luck. Like that in and of itself speaks to their incredible fortuitous luck. Mm-hmm. Tom, Johnny Boy RN has a question or a comment. Says, after years of being a draft or a player away to get into contention, it is depressing to see them tear down a 12-5 team and preempt a rebuild. On the spectrum of contender and rebuild, Tom, are the Cowboys closer to rebuild? And if your answer is yes, what percent of that is of their own doing?
Oh, I lean towards them having shifted into a rebuild stance. I do think they are, and it's all they're doing.
Right.
You know, it's 100% because they've made all of these past mistakes. They've overpaid so many people. They've done bad contracts to investing resources in lower value positions like running back and tight end, and foregoing investing in defensive end and wide receivers that are much more impactful as far as their value to the team.
Sorry, Tom, even along those lines, like the drafting of Micah in a vacuum was an improper utilization of a resource. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like drafting a linebacker that high is not a great utilization of a resource. He wound up being a unicorn, but that doesn't make you smart. That makes you incredibly lucky. But continue.
Yes. And they are misreading that look as how brilliant they are at drafting. And and you know, Paul was exactly right. Every draft pick, even the first pick of the draft, is a roll of the dice. It's just, you know, your odds are better the earlier you draft, but there is always a chance for a bust with every single player that comes. And that doesn't even take into account that it only takes one bad injury to ruin everything in the first place.
Paul, do you agree that they feel closer to a rebuilding team than a contender right now?
Yeah, I do. Sadly, because we pretty much had all of our eggs in the basket last season. It was probably our best chance. We had a team capable of winning the Super Bowl last season, and now it seems to be not from a team perspective, but just from the business perspective, like how the deals have been done. It's sacrificing players that we're in desperate still we want to keep so badly to keep the bond going, like from quarterback to wide receiver, and also from defensive players as well. Like those team, it's a rebuilding stage, sadly.
I wrote about this last week. I don't know if either of you saw it. If you didn't, my feelings are really hurt. But I believe Blue 365 says them hitting on free agency last year didn't help with their hubris either. We talked about this on the Roundtable last week as well, which was sort of served as the inspiration for the article I wrote. And Tom, they are bargain bin hunters. That's what they want to be. And they right now are smelling themselves because they're like, we found Jaron Curse, we found Carlos Watkins, we found Terrell Basham, we found DeMonte Casey, we found Malik Hooker, we got all these contributions from our bargain bin. So what reason? Like, see, like, look, we can do this. Like, we got this. There's proof of concept, and that is terrifying to consider with free agency a week away, because they are surely, Tom, going to double down even after creating all the precious salary cap space that they supposedly need.
Yeah, and there's even a question, you know, are they going to bring back Jaron Curse? You know, are they going to re-sign Brent Urban, who would have been a much better contributor if he hadn't been hurt? I'd love to see him back, and yet I'm afraid they're not going to bring them back because now those players have gone out, proven their value, and have higher market value. And so it's like it's a vicious cycle, and they keep sticking with these things and wind up having a 12-5 season despite what they did, and yet they're reading it wrong. They're confusing correlation and causation, and it is truly maddening, and it's going to be hard to get the hope, the fervor, the excitement back.
Yeah, I feel like I know some people listen to this with their kids, around. So if that's the case, this is your warning. Distract them for a moment. But I feel like we've all been told Santa Claus isn't real, and so it's difficult to like, like Christmas will come, like you're saying, Tom. The season will come, and there'll be lights, and there'll be the usual treats and the usual movies and stuff will play on television. But Paul, it won't feel the same. Like we won't have that same, call it innocence, call it, just general happy disposition. But we, like it's people say like you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. You can't recreate that. You can't create that, sort of almost like focus group. Like you cannot refool us that way. We cannot unlearn this. And like that's where I feel like our innocence truly has been compromised with them.
Yeah.
That's a really depressing answer. Okay, well, a couple things before we get out of here. Paul, since you need to pick me up, Anthony Hitchens was cut by the Kansas City Chiefs recently, according to the Dallas Morning News, quote, has a desire to return to the Cowboys. He will be over 30 when the season starts, just over 30 for what's worth. His birthday is in the summer. Do you want to see the Cowboys bring him back? He has only ever been to the conference championship since leaving the Cowboys, obviously, with the Kansas City Chiefs. Won the Super Bowl, so he does kind of have that been there, done that vibe that maybe they need. But certainly, the Chiefs saw his play regress a little bit over the last year, which is why they're moving on themselves.
I'm going to say yes from the knowledge point of view, from what he's learned from the Kansas City organization, what he can bring into Dallas. But there's also the question that it depends how cheap we can bring him back for. That's my only thing. Like, that's the only thing that stopped me from saying, no, that's it. Really, it's just down to cost. It's nothing to do with it's nothing wrong with the actual player. Like people say, oh, if Kansas City have let him go, why should Dallas go? Well, when you put it in perspective, LVE is likely to go. We've got Jabril Cox just coming back from from a serious injury. We don't know the status of how well he's going to perform. Micah Parsons is pretty much the only guy right now. And so we're kind of thinking, does Anthony Hitchens bring anything to the table? Absolutely. But at what price? At his age? So that's it.
Tom, first of all, F. Kit Crutch says it's okay, kids. Archie doesn't mean what he said. Santa is very much a real person. That's right. Was making that up. I was just pissed. That's really what it was. But Tom, Alex Storm says vet minimum, sign him up relative to Anthony Hitchens. Do you agree? Or is this a little too Cowboys, a little bit too progress stoppery? I mean, a lot of it really truly does depend on what they want to do with Micah Parsons. If they do release DeMarcus Lawrence, or they're devoting more of his time to rushing the passer, then you obviously weaken your linebacker depth to a certain degree. You're not going to have Leighton Vander Esch back in all likelihood, as Paul mentioned. Your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, I'm like Paul. Well, let's kick the tires. Let's find out what it would cost, and then see how that fits into the precious cap situation. If there's room there, I think he would be a good addition to the linebacker room. To if nothing else, to help develop Jabril. He might need a good mentor there to bring him along if he's going to be the player that we hoped he was when he was drafted.
I'm indifferent. I mean, fine if it happens, cool. If it doesn't, whatever. I would like, to the point you first started with, Paul, like I would like a veteran, kind of like what Gerald McCoy was supposed to be to the team, like somebody who's really accomplished a lot in the NFL. Obviously,
Yeah.
Micah Parsons is a baller, but, and if you're going to take away DeMarcus Lawrence, one of the loudest leaders of the team, again, Mike is obviously kind of inheriting that role, and you've got Trayvon Diggs as an up-and-comer, but I think it would be cool to have somebody who has done it at the highest level.
Yeah, it's like you need that kind of not mentorship within the team to a certain degree. I mean, Hitchens does bring in, like, he's worked with a white linebacker court, has gotten to the Super Bowl and won it, and been to conference championships. Like, he's been there and he's done it, and he's got the ring to prove it. So, from what Anthony's learned during his time from Kansas, he can use that comparison from what Dallas have done wrong, like, over the past years. Like, I don't know. I'm spitballing here. I'm just saying, but he can use what he's done, what was the best parts, what he's done successfully from Kansas, and bring that over and just lead it on to the next up and coming guys. Give that knowledge to, like, so Micah Parsons. Who knows? That might even elevate his game, and Micah Parsons might actually like wipe the floor of TJ Watt next year. Come defensive. I'm going way ahead of myself, but you get where I'm coming from.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not opposed, but that does seem like a classic kind of, wave 3 of free agency signing from the Cowboys, bring him back and whatever. And then, Stephen Jones does his hit and says, like, we're really excited about Anthony. I mean, he's a great guy, great locker room. He was a captain for the Chiefs. I mean, roster acquisition in the NFL is a 24/7, 365 process. And we're happy that, it worked out for us with this particular signing. Tom, as we kind of start to wind down, do you have anything on your chest that you want to get off? Anything that you just, you want to sigh deeply about?
I am a little bit upset that there's just not been a whole lot of talk about what they're going to do about the O-line. I think
their plan is to just cross their fingers and hope Kenyon Green falls to them. That's the plan.
Yeah, that seems to be it. And I saw that Kenyon didn't impress at the combine, which may put him a more likely resource to be available at 24. But, I just, I saw something about somebody talking about La'el Collins might be a trade piece, which means
there was the chatter last year that he was going to retire. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, he's had a weird couple of years. Needless to say.
Fortunately, they've got Terrence Steele, who is another one of those lucky finds out there who might be able to step in and do it. But yeah, they've still got a problem at left guard, and I don't know what they're going to do there.
You mentioned Kenyon Green. I've been doing my little research and did watch the combine and stuff like that. And there's a guy I think in the like day 2, day 3 that could be worth looking at as a chat. The guard from Chattanooga. Was it Cole Strange? That's his name, Cole Strange, and quite an intelligent player. Very intelligent for a guard, and in terms of football IQ, that's definitely someone I think that could definitely be worth looking into. Like, because who knows? And this is the thing I want to get off my chest. I don't even know if O-line is going to be our first priority anymore, regards to the whole Amari Cooper situation. Like, does that mean if we let go of Cooper, does that mean wide receivers now higher priority? Like, what even linebacker? That's still, we're likely to still draft linebackers. Like, it seems like everything's open up in the air. The only positions that seems to be really safe right now is quarterback and running back, pretty much.
Well, and they'll sign, maybe it's an Anthony Hitchens. That's all they're going to use free agency for, is to hedge themselves and protect themselves for whatever doesn't fall to them at 24. So they'll sign Anthony Hitchens, and that'll be their, like, okay, if we don't go line, if we don't take Nakobe Dean, if Kenyon falls, we're good. I don't know what free agent receiver, it will be your, I mean, I don't want to say it'll be your Deontay Thompson, sort of day or time, but I mean, it will be that as they protect themselves, and they'll rely on CD and Michael Gallup. They re-signed Noah Brown today to a 1-year deal, so you've got that going on, and we're gonna get ready to hear all the Simi Fehoko buzz. That will be everything that we start to hear.
Yeah.
For the next few months. Last one for us, and I'll throw this to you first, Paul. Thank you for the super chat. Jordan Thomas says, why should we have faith in this front office? I mean, if you have to have an answer, Paul, what is yours?
I can't possibly answer that if I'm being perfectly honest. For the first time, my faith has been questioned because of how the Jones family are been treating this whole situation, and it's kind of year by year, it's regressed. I'm just getting to the point now. We need to do better. We need to actually have a proper GM to run the football operations and not treat the Cowboys as a marketing tool and actually treat it as an actual football franchise. That's it.
I'm a Manchester United supporter, and I'm like in the same boat with my two teams.
Yeah, I won't mention anything about Man U, mate.
But that's like, I feel very. It's like all the Glazers care is like, how many Ronaldo kits can we sell? It's like, I mean, they got smoked by City on Sunday, and they don't care. There was no. Whatever. Anyway, I'm over it. I'm not over it. I'm dead inside. But Tom, why should we have faith in this front office? You have to answer this, and your answer cannot be because Will McClay drafts very well.
Oh, well, there cuts my pins off my ring. If you're talking about the Jones family, we can have faith that they're going to find more and more creative ways to screw things up. That's about the only faith I've got.
That's Johnny Boy RN actually says that is probably the most aggravating part of this. We go into the offseason with O-line issues, but instead we disrupt a roster and create drama.
That's a great comment.
That is
so true. That's a nail in the coffin, that one.
Right, like again, it was very clear and obvious what they needed, and they said that's cool, but like this one part of the house is on fire. We're gonna set off bombs in every room. Like that's.
I'll tell you, RJ. You ever seen the meme where it's the dog sitting in the room and it's all fire and it's like, this is fine. No, it's not.
I actually see, like, I don't even think that's who they are, because they're not telling us this is fine. They're telling us this is great. They're telling us this was the plan. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh no, we planned for this to be on fire so that we could come in and we could save it. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole plan. And so, like, it's a great question, Jordan. Like, why should we have faith? I mean, my answer is to echo these guys. We can't. Like, there's no reason. There's nothing they've done to justify faith. And to the point we started the show off with, you see other front offices, I wouldn't even say get creative. Like, there aren't these like ultra creative things that other teams are doing. You just see them exploring avenues that the Cowboys refuse to. And like Manchester United, this is one of the wealthiest, most well-off, well-positioned, resource available, forget teams, just companies in the world. And they somehow, Paul, just refuse to do anything. I mean, because the status quo keeps the lights on, and on and on and on and on.
I mean, yeah. Not to use Man U as an example, but I'll use a team like, for example, Cincinnati. They drafted the quarterback they desperately needed. They drafted a wide receiver they desperately need. They're now looking to drafting players that they actually need to fix the voids where they are right now. And look what happened. A team that were pretty much number one overall 2 seasons ago have now elevated and brought themselves to the Super Bowl. Like, they did the smart thing and bringing in players of what they really actually needed to do and worked around their scenario when it comes to the cap and stuff like that. So it's like the Cowboys have every opportunity to do this, but they just seem to, like Tom and yourself said, they just drag on these scenarios for different players, and it's too late, and we end up overpaying, and we're now paying the price.
Tom, this is my last question. I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm going to assume you guys have felt similarly at different points in your lives when, you've met somebody or you've been talking to somebody and they've thrown out some sort of like ridiculous conspiracy theory, something like the Joneses, they don't care about winning. All they care about is making money. And like somewhere in my heart of hearts, in my head of heads, I've thought like, okay, like this is just a person talking, right? The way things have gone, I have a difficult time disputing that. Like I'm not saying I'm ready to say that's 100% true, but I can no longer assign it 0% validity. I mean, is that fair to say, Tom? Like, is it like something I've been saying this offseason is they are becoming the meme. They are becoming the meme and the joke that a lot of people in what used to feel like unsubstantiated ways, but now potentially actually legitimate ways say they are.
Yeah, it's the only alternative is that they are still believing that they have the right answer and just don't have an inability to see the reality. And the fact that they are so financially successful and have such a powerful brand actually kind of helps insulate them from the effects of reality.
Man, we're getting to some real like Westworld stuff here.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, sorry we bummed you all out. It was Paul's fault. But no, seriously,
man.
You can.
I know I'm 5,000 miles away, but don't do me like that, man.
You can hear Paul every Sunday on the World's Team, our newest show on the Blog on the Boys podcast network with Meg Murray. Again, you know, they cover everything going on with the Cowboys and certainly lately have been talking about the potential for them heading to London this coming season. We're all certainly hoping that's the case. You can hear Tom every Thursday on Riled Up with Roy White. They've been off the last 2 weeks, but they are back this week. So get ready for Tom and Roy to eviscerate this team. You can also read Tom at bloggingtheboys.com. Tom's on Twitter at TomRyleBTB. Paul is at IMPStew. Check out all the work the UK Cowboys people do as well. Tom, the final, however many words you want belong to you, buddy.
It's football, folks. Just be glad because there's a lot of worse problems in the world right now.
We'll see y'all next week.